Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Also, check out Sirius Channel 81 on Sirius XM for the home team broadcast with David Kellum and the boys when the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets come to Oxford, Mississippi, 6:30 Sunday night. That is Channel 81 on Sirius XM. Or just search Ole Miss Rebels on the SXM app. The Locked On Ole Miss podcast is there as well. Anyway, I am Stephen Willis, and I am alongside Pratt Rogers for his weekly segment on Ole Miss football. And Ole Miss survived a little bit Saturday.
What's up, man? Survived is about the only adjective that I would use to describe that game. I was frustrated.
Definitely. I did a 30-minute podcast that is airing tomorrow night with Bill Flowers talking about the offense and just basically, hey, running plays can't all be between the hashes and pass plays outside the numbers. Football doesn't work that way, and they've got to get that fixed a little bit.
Yeah, I'm hoping we implement some sort of, more screen action, stuff like that to Judkins. I saw, we tried once or twice to kind of throw out to him in the flat. I hope we implement more of that versus Georgia Tech. First off, I hope we don't need to. But if we do need to, I hope that's kind of a creative measure to get Judkins in space.
I think this Georgia Tech game, it might be the biggest trap football game that I can remember at Ole Miss.
That's funny you say that. I actually did not feel like that going into the week because we played so poorly against last week against Tulane. I think everybody will have their head on straight, I hope. But no, it sets up exactly for that of, hey, we've got a big game in Bama following Georgia Tech, but if we'd gone out and hung 50 on Tulane and then previously hung 73 on Mercer, I think, it would have been very easy to coast in the Georgia Tech game. But that didn't exactly happen in Tulane. So maybe it is a trap game still. The spread's like 20 right now. I mean, Vegas thinks we'll win handedly.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and I don't want to call out any other podcast or anything like that, but I was listening to a couple other podcasts, and they were all like, hey, everything happens in 12 days and 11 days, and you look down and do the math. It's like, okay, they're talking about the Bama game. They're not talking about Georgia Tech. They're talking about not knowing anything until after that Bama game. And I don't expect Georgia Tech is good enough to win the game. I think they're good enough to make it sloppy, and it might look a lot like last week did. Now, the advantage that Ole Miss has is that this game is in Oxford instead of in Atlanta. In Atlanta, it absolutely could get squirrely. But, yeah, I just don't know. This is one of those games I don't even care about the spread. Just win. Just get out of it.
Yeah, look, that should be a motto for every Ole Miss football game in the history of Ole Miss football games. Forget the spread, get the W, and get out of Dodge. But, Vegas makes a lot of money looking at that stuff. So, anyway, I pay attention to it just kind of for reasons you described. How are we looking? What is the outside perception of Ole Miss football primarily?
Yeah, and it should be interesting. I mean, I'm doing my shows about the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets every day, doing all the stuff I normally do. So we're going to cover it at least. But even my shows have a little bit of Alabama in them. I can't even say that I'm above it because I'm doing the exact same thing. And that just makes me think if it's this hard for me to do it and this hard for other people to do it, the players have to be there too a little bit. And they're playing against a team that Ole Miss beat 42-0 last year.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with all that. I completely agree. You use the term trap game. Completely agree with that. Get that. The only knock on that is that we played so poorly last week that hopefully we come out with our hair on fire.
But they won by 17.
I know. You can still – both can be true.
Double the spread. More than doubled covering the spread.
Both can be
And then we
true
walk out of there thinking
simultaneously.
Greg Zolman threw for 450 yards as Vanderbilt beat David Cutcliffe. That's the feeling that people left the Tulane game, like something happened. Then you look up, it's like, we won that game by 17 and closed it on a 30-3 run. Yeah. It was a weird game. It was a weird game.
But look, as we've talked about before on the show, if you are getting paid the amount of money that Kiffin is getting paid, with that come real expectations, and having kind of being a few weird plays away from something really going sour versus Tulane is not why you get paid $9 million a year. I mean, that's just getting down to brass tacks. But look, I think everybody has elevated expectations, and I'm for that. That's what makes a great program. I'm not trying to be a cynic. I'm excited about what the future of Ole Miss football because of that.
Yeah, it's a really great thing. You sit about looking at what's going on, and you have a chance to do something pretty special. Because I'm gonna be honest, the West is for the taking. Anybody can win it. There are probably 4 different teams in the SEC West that can win the West this year, and Ole Miss is one of them. But it's at the point where they have to evolve their play calling in the way they're approaching games, because second and third level RPOs are cute, right? They are. If you're throwing a pass off of the free safety, what they're doing, the quarterback takes a second before he makes that throw. If you are running a run block scheme, which we are, that's what an RPO is, it really hangs the offensive line out to dry. And probably a combination happened against Tulane of the offensive line kind of getting whipped a little bit. And also these play calls did not help them out. If Ole Miss would do a little bit of quick game from time to time, I think Ole Miss would have boat raced that game.
Yeah, don't disagree with that. And I don't know the ins and outs of offensive line blocking during an RPO scheme, but my understanding is it's always kind of you're blocking as if there is a run, correct? I mean, that's kind of the scheme behind it. You're not pass blocking at all, correct?
Yeah. Yes. You're always run blocking. And in that case, it's always easier to pass rush against somebody trying to run block you.
Exactly. And that's where you can sit there and exactly give the O-line at least a little bit of credit. But, I'm more surprised that we have so many returning starters from last year, whether it's Eli Acker or Jaden Williams, that are not getting the start right now. And I thought we had a very good offensive line unit last year. Why are those guys on the bench right now primarily? And being on the bench is probably an exaggeration because they've gotten a lot of playing time. But why, we had a good unit last year. You would think those guys would progress instead of regress,
Now, this is going to sound like a cop-out answer. I mean, it genuinely is. I think Ole Miss has to wait until after Alabama before they ask those questions. It could be a situation to where all of a sudden Alabama's offensive line does not get the pressure even that they did in the game last November. And Alabama looks more contained, and the offensive line did a really good job. This is important to remember, especially when playing games like this. Texas played Rice in week 1, gave up 10 quarterback pressures and 4 sacks against Rice. Against Alabama, he was pressured,
the powerhouse,
and he was pressured twice, and he was not sacked at all. You cannot transitive property even going from Tulane into the next game. It just doesn't work that way. We want it to work that way. We want it to be a predictive measure so we understand what's going on, but you can't do that. It could be a combination of basically Tulane engage aiding blitzing us, sending all 8 players into the quarterback and having 2 men free. And then all of a sudden, the offensive line looked like they struggled a little bit. Yeah, there's 2 free rushers on that play. The problem was the play call that was requiring the receivers to go 2.5 seconds down the field before the ball was thrown. Yeah. But the offensive line gets the blame.
I get it. I get it. the transitive property is how fans rationalize
Oh
college
yeah.
football, though. I mean, if you take that away, you're taking away everything in college football. Oh, look, if we beat this team by this much, we should beat this team by this much. That's how expectations are set, and math, I guess, is put on, incalculable concept in college football. So, look, I get that. You're right, Stephen, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the fun behind it.
Yeah,
That's
I
why
mean,
we all love it.
you have those fans that do the transitive property. That's a key college football component. You have the contrarian fans that no matter how good it was, they want to talk about how bad it was. It's like, okay, Ole Miss won that game 73-7, but he scored on that first play for Mercer. That's a problem with the
Yeah.
defense. Those people are out there, and there's also the one that in a game that you lose 30 points, and I'm probably a victim of this one, is like, okay, it's all fun. We're going to be good. There's no need to we're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic here. We're not going down, but that is all that is all what makes college football fandom fun. And
I get so upset,
I
Steven.
get it.
I can't.
I,
I get so upset. I'm rearranging the
I,
deck
I, I
chairs on the
yeah.
Titanic a lot of games.
Yeah, whenever I was younger, okay, I used to get real emotional when it came to Ole Miss football. Like in my 20s, I was a mess. One of the worst arguments I gotten with my wife was her talking when Auburn was driving the ball down the field. She just looked at me against Eli, that comeback game where Ben Obamano
Yeah.
dropped a pass in the end zone. She just
Yeah.
looked at me and said, "Now, Steve, no matter what, this was a good football game." And it was like the worst argument that we got into in our marriage. Her doing it. I used to be extremely emotional about that. I'm not emotional about this now. I enjoy it. I'm fun. I try to be reasonable. I discuss things that other people want to discuss. And I kind of want to be the microphone for the fan base. Either they're upset or they're happy. And that's kind of what I do.
Well, look, that's why people tune in, Stephen, because because you put a positive twist on a lot. People like me who are ready to expect the worst and hope for the best. Sometimes that's why you've carved out a niche and done well with it. I agree with all that.
Yeah, and as positive as I am, we also have perspectives on the show where all types of fans come on and talk. I mean, Bill Flowers came in. He's bringing the fire about this offense at the beginning of the season. And I was like, hey, let them have it. I am not going to say no to a perspective. And if that's what you think and if that's your opinion, heck, you could have voiced it. I'll give you a platform to do that. I might not agree with it, but I'll let you say it.
Arrogant. I love it. That's what it's about.
All right, let's change subjects real quick. Jimothy Lewis, did you say he was looking at an official visit for Arkansas?
I read that on 247. I guess either yesterday or today. That obviously you've had that legendary quote that, "Oh yeah, Kiffin and I talk a lot. We're still in constant communication." Probably what was that, like 3 weeks ago? And it seemingly has a tentative OV to come to Oxford during the Arkansas game. Now, look, I don't know if that happens, but I think we've both said for a while now that I don't know that. I'm sure he will but
well, I'm sure he will. I was just wondering if he's used it yet.
I doubt it, honestly, but okay. I have no idea. I think that this is one that's going to kind of come down to the finish line, and clearly at a position of need. We've kind of parlayed the offensive line struggles discussion into Jimothy Lewis too, somebody that you could sit down after the Tulane game and be like, "Hey, look, we think you could plug in here and do a better job or help out."
How that works.
All that. Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was of note to at least bring up that recruitment is seemingly not done.
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think this was ever done. I think that during the summer when he was in Madison, Mississippi, and Bo Bounds is a big person around the MRA program. There's people that are around the MRA program that are Mississippi State fans. His father, I believe, is in Madison. They are working the angles that they always work. But I always said once he left Madison and went back to school and back to IMG, he was fair game and it was going to open up. And I honestly don't think he's going to end up at State. I think he's going to end up somewhere else. But it's going to be because, I mean, he's down here like an hour south of Tampa, Florida at IMG Academy. A good football player. And Lane Kiffin, he's right down the road from Andy Jaffe, by the way, our super recruiter, just so you know. Good football player. And I think Andy Jaffe, by the way, is going to be in Oxford this weekend.
Nice. I saw a blurb on that. I hadn't had a chance to read it yet. That's great.
Yeah, I think him and Dylan Hip and they're going to kind of blow it out a little bit again this weekend. So we'll see exactly who it goes. The player that I am looking forward to, and I've heard nothing about this, so nobody say anything Steve said, because Steve doesn't say anything ever. But the player that I'm looking forward to see if he pops up on a game visit list is Daniel Hill.
Oh my gosh, that would be awesome. I just feel like there's never been any momentum with that at all. None. That would be incredible.
Yeah, just 2 tweets. Basically, he tweeted out graphics the last couple of weeks. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, well, you wouldn't do that unless you liked him in some way. So we'll see if Daniel Hill visits, because right now I think it's either South Carolina or Alabama.
Yeah.
For
and
Daniel Hill.
I think it's been those two since the beginning of his recruitment. I feel like, I don't think there's been anybody else in the mix.
Well, it started out with Mississippi State, and I think that's the reason there's no traction with Ole Miss, is because I think he's a genuine Mississippi State fan. And then when he looked at recruiting and everything, Mississippi State can't match what Carolina and Alabama does. Heck, Mississippi State can't match what Ole Miss does. So, I mean, they've got a problem down in Starkville. They've got a rich booster that's trying to make some waves, and they did that after the last time I talked about them not having any money. And they're trying to fix it now, but right now they're in a pretty bad way at the moment.
Well, look, they've got a big test coming up against LSU. We keep talking about our litmus test in 12 days State. Or whatever versus Bama. Yeah, I'm
Go State.
I will actually, I hate to say this, Steven, I will actually be in Starkville for that game. So I will be watching it, and I know. So anyway, I'm going to be pulling on State too, and it'll be an interesting game. I think the line's like 9.5 on that, but I think State hangs in there for a while. I think this is kind of a big point for them.
State is interesting. Okay. They're a team that, I don't know, for whatever it is, whenever you start, I guess because you're used to the whole air raid and what they used to do, and they start running the football, and they're pretty good in the first half. But once teams figure out what they're doing, they're not very good. The second half of that game, they got lucky against Arizona. I think they know they got lucky against Arizona. And now it's like, hey, we're in survival mode from this moment forward. But if you can jump on teams, they have a chance a couple of times, a couple of games this season. They have a chance by jumping on their opponent. I think they've got LSU this week. They go to Columbia next week, and we will have an idea of what Mississippi State football looks like by the end of September.
I agree with that. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Yep. Yeah. I think this is a big litmus test.
All right. Now, I'm not going to give my pick because we do a Why Ole Miss Wins episode to where that's part of that. So what is your pick for the Georgia Tech game, Pratt Rogers? I need a score prediction.
Score prediction. I am going to say 42-17. I think it's a big win.
Comfortable cover.
I think it's a big win. It is a comfortable cover. I think it's a big win. And, I may be looking back and saying that was really dumb, but that is kind of how I feel. I don't think we look at this as a trap game. I think that's kind of how me and you are differentiating on this game. And, we could look up and Ole Miss takes an L. But I think we come out kind of with our heads screwed on right after the Tulane
And
game and
this
say,
isn't my
hey,
official score prediction.
we've got a chance to get this.
Yeah, this isn't my official score prediction, but I will go ahead and say where I'm leaning tonight. And this could change over the next couple of days before I do that. But I'm thinking it's something like 38-28 at this point. Ole Miss still wins. They still win comfortably, but just way too many points on the betting line at the moment.
No, I think 19.5 to 20 is a huge spread. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I think that's a gigantic spread. But anyway, I've got faith in the Rebs and maybe a little too much, but we shall see.
All right. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Pratt Rogers, thank you so much for stopping by. We'll talk to you next week as we get ready for Alabama. See, I did it again. Talking Alabama already. I'm telling you, this is, yeah. So we'll talk to you next week, buddy.
See you, man. Thank you. Bye.
All right.